Today we're going to talk about how to combine images. Now this is going to be one of your assignments, and we're going to combine a couple images, two images that weren't originally together, that we have to make look as though that's where they were, that's how the original image was. And so I'm going to go through this together, and we're going to be able to see how it works. But first, there are a couple of things that we need to make sure that we do. In order for an image to be convincing, there are really a couple of things that you have to look out for. One, of course, is your light sources. Okay, are your light sources accurate? For example, if I've got this tree right here, or I've got this shape, and here's my background, and here's a tree, it's going to look weird to have, a shadow going this way, and then the shadow on the tree on this side, because then you've got a light source coming here lighting the tree, but you also have another light source coming at that angle. And so you've got to make sure that your light sources, one, directionally are accurate, and two, are also accurate as far as their color and their hue. For example, if I take a picture of somebody inside and then I have them standing out here next to this tree and they're outside, the light source on this person is going to be totally different as far as a hue or color. This, because it was taken inside, it's going to have a little more of a yellow tone to it. This is going to be a little more of a blue tone. So we're going to have variations in light. And so light sources is probably one of the very first things that you have to consider. The second thing you have to consider in combining images is size. Do they fit together? Are they accurate? Do you have a car that is, and I'm going to just erase this stuff really quick here so that you can kind of see what we're talking about. Okay. Do you have a car that is this big? Here's your Volkswagen bus, and then you have a person standing next to it, that's this big. And there he is standing there, right? So size becomes an issue. You have to make sure that the relationship of your sizes are working. Now, if it's depth or something like that, something in the background is going to be smaller, or in the foreground is going to be bigger. And so you've got those relationships that you have to consider. Third is probably angle. Oops, that's angle. Okay? When you're dealing with the angle, what perspective are you looking at? If you're looking at a tree from down below, here's our tree that we're looking at, and we're seeing it like this, it's not going to fit to have it on a flat surface that we're looking at, actually, or a surface that we're looking at coming like this, because those angles aren't working together. You need to take into consideration the angle that the original picture is at, and then the angle that this is going at. And so you want to make sure that those are accurate. And then finally, probably the fourth thing is focus. Look at your depth of field. If things at this area right here, if this is at a certain level of focus, this focus needs to match. If this whole area, everything surrounding it, is a little bit blurry, then probably the tree or whatever is around it needs to be blurry. So you've got to make sure that those things match in order for all of this to be consistent and for it to be convincing. And so in order to combine images and make sure that they're convincing, you need to look at four things: light sources, and I would say angle, okay, angle of light, and then also the hue or color of that light. Is it yellow? Is it blue? Is it red? Stuff like that. Look at your shadows. Are they working together? Then your size relationships. How are those working? The overall angle that you're taking imagery at. And then finally the focus. Okay? Now with that as a background, we're going to go into a different project, or into this project. So let's close this. I'm not going to save this. I have a couple of different images here. Let me go to my window and layers. Here's a plane image right here. This is an airplane that's here at UVU's campus. Now what I'm going to do is just copy this really fast I'm just going to use my lasso tool to kind of get the area around it generally. I don't need to have it really specific right now. So I'll copy it. I'm going to come into my other image, and this is a background that I've already picked, and I'm going to paste it. So Command V or Edit Paste. Okay. Now my size relationship is working out okay on this, but one of the problems I'm having is my shadows, and that's the reason I cut this out, so I can kind of see the relationship. This area over here is a little darker than this area over here, and yet this area over here is a little lighter than this area here. Fortunately, I can go here and go to Edit, Transform. I'm going to flip it horizontally, and I'm going to make sure that it works now as far as the light source. Because if you see, we've got this light source right here, and this is where the low point in the light is, and then we get a shadow that gets a little higher over here. And so that works. Fortunately, it works that way. Sometimes flipping it isn't going to solve my problem because it's going to just change where the light is coming from, but in this case it works out okay. A couple of other things to be aware of when I do that. I'm going to zoom in close here and just make sure anywhere that there's type, for example, this right here is now backwards, so I'm going to have to come in here later and fix these, fix some of this. This isn't as detailed, it's not going to be that important. Unfortunately, UVU, that's not exactly accurate either, so I've got to go in and fix that. If I do that on this image, I don't know if I will, but I might. Okay. Now, at this point, I'm going to come around here, and I'm going to use my pen tool because this is a really precise shape. I'm going to come around and use my pen tool. Now, I knew that the angle on this was what I wanted. I planned it out beforehand. I got to a position where I was looking slightly up from underneath on this plane, and then I squatted down low so that when I was working, or when I took the picture down here, I was at a low perspective, so I was coming up. Now, it's not quite exactly right, so I'm probably going to have to change this wheel and bring it up just a little bit to make it work, but that won't be a big deal. So that's why you have Photoshop. Now to trace around this, or to get rid of this, I'm going to use the pen tool. Let me get to my framing, proper framing function. I'm going to use the pen tool just simply because this is a very mechanical image, has a lot of precise shapes. There's not a lot of gradation or anything like that that I have to worry about, so I should be pretty safe. So I'll get in here with the pen tool, and I'm going to go around and trace this entire image, getting rid of all of the excess, or that it will help me prepare to get rid of the excess. Okay, now we're going to finish this up by just dragging our paths. Now notice the longer the distance between anchor points, I'll push Option to get rid of the extra handle. The longer the distance between anchor points, the smoother that line is going to be. And now I'm going to come in a little close just to make sure I'm finishing this off. I'm a little bit short here, so I'll select that. I'll push the Command key, that'll give me the arrow so I can select that. And now I'll just finish up my shape right there. And so we're in good shape. Now, one thing I have to be aware of is I've got this path, and let's go to my Paths palette. Here you can see representation of that path all the way around it. But there are areas where it's knocked out in the middle, and you can see that right here. So what I've got to do here is, with my pen tool, and if I can get it back on there we go. With my pen tool, I'm going to come in here and load this area right here. Or not load it, I'm going to draw a path around that. Push Option, get rid of that extra handle, and come up here. And I think I actually need to move that back a little bit. It seems like that's off just a little bit right there. Okay, I've got that. And now what I'm going to go ahead and do, check this other area. Here's another space where I've got a little bit of a problem. So I'll draw a path in here. And I'm going to go all the way to the corner and just click and drag. So I get that nice smooth shape. And I'll come back in here. And notice I've got to pull this way, get rid of that extra anchor point, come back in here and pull up. So I get a little better curve. Now those paths are a little tough to see because of the value of the plane there, but in a moment you'll see exactly what's happening. Now, I'm going to save this path. I'm going to save it by double-clicking on where it says work path, and just, it could be path 1, or I'll just type in airplane. Hit OK. Now I can take that path and come down here to that path. In that path palette, this icon at the bottom, it will load it as a selection, or load that path that I just drew as a selection. And you'll see when I click on that, it will knock out those other areas that I don't want to use anymore. Okay? Now, I'm going to go ahead and go select, modify. What I want to do, and I'm going to contract this by 1 pixel. And then I'll go to select, modify, feather, and I'm going to feather this by 1/2 pixel. Now the reason I do that is I want to get a soft edge around this plane. If I just go in and cut and yank all this stuff out, I can have a very crisp line, and it's going to give the sense that it was just cut and pasted on there. I want this to blend in, and so by feathering that edge, first of all, by contracting that selection, it's going to pull that selection in a little bit around there, and by feathering it, I'm going to get a little bit of a blend between the plane and the exterior. See right here, we've got this little blend going on. I need that same sort of appearance when it gets against the building in the background. So I'll do that. Now currently the plane is selected, so I'll go to Select, Inverse, right there. Now all the exterior is selected, and I can delete. And it will pull out all of that information that's all around it. And so now that works out pretty well. In fact, if I get my Move tool, I can click on that plane and I can move it around and get it to the space that I think is going to work the best as far as the light source hitting it, which is probably about right here, I think. And so compositionally, I haven't done the best job, but it's okay for right now. Or I can leave it here because we've got kind of these halftone or these shadows in here. And I can always give a little bit of shadow to this, and I think I'm going to have to do that here. This is awfully bright, and so is that right there. So let's talk about how to do that. What I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to create an entirely new layer, and then with my paintbrush, I'm going to get a large brush like that. I'm going to load, just push Option, and I can click and load kind of that blue color, the shadow color. And then in a really low opacity on this new layer, I'm going to come in and just paint that a little bit darker along there. And then I'm also going to do the same in this area right in there, just to darken it up a little bit. Once I do that, I'll come back over here to where it's normal, where my layer mode is normal. I'm going to change that to multiply, and that will darken that up a little bit. Now you're going to see it's going to darken everything else up, and I don't want that. So what I'll do is push Command, click on this icon right here, okay, and then I'll go ahead. Now what it's done is it's selected everything where the plane is. So I'm going to select Inverse and delete. And it will get rid of that shadow that I painted in there. But now you can see how it's just a little bit darker in those areas, and it fits a little bit better within those shadows. And I used that shadow, I got my shadow from this area over here. Just to paint black is going to look fake. So this is what I had to do in order to create that. Okay?